Hi, and welcome back to another episode. I hope you enjoyed last week's, and I'd love to know, how did you go connecting to your future self? I speak about your future self a lot in my book, From Self Neglect to Self Compassion. And talking about the book, today is publication day, and I'm absolutely thrilled and excited. What I thought I'd do for this episode is I'm going to read you a little bit from the book. It's not unusual for us to neglect the parts of ourselves that are suffering in the moment. You can hope that you tend to your feelings and needs later, but the more likely scenario is that you'll be busy with something else by then, and those feelings and needs will be easily overlooked. Now imagine that happens once, then it happens every day or every week, and this goes on for weeks, months, even years. An accumulation of moments of self-neglect. Not self-neglect that is necessarily noticeable. You may still be showering, eating, exercising, socializing with friends, and doing the things that you know are helpful to you. Or maybe you're not doing those things. I'm talking about the ongoing suffering that you are experiencing throughout your daily life. The suffering that you don't label as suffering. The feelings and needs you push through and set aside. There are parts of you that need your attention. Parts of you that are being continually reminded that they don't matter and their needs are not important. Ultimately, those parts of you will demand attention. You may be familiar with the saying, if you don't make time for your wellness, you'll be forced to make time for your illness. I'm here to tell you, if you don't make time to nurture and attend to all parts of yourself, you are putting yourself at greater risk of burnout and making it harder to manage everything. If we truly want to take care of ourselves, we need to embrace the whole of who we are. Not only the parts we like, love, or feel proud of, but also our shadow side. Our shadow side is the part of us that has dark thoughts, shameful feelings, and is snarky, bitchy, and uncaring. It is vengeful, spiteful, and everything we like to think we are not or could never be. It is not all of who we are, but it is a part of who we are. It is important to acknowledge that as humans, we are capable of awful and horrific acts. But just because we have the capacity to do something doesn't mean we will choose to. However, if we don't recognise and acknowledge this, then when a dark or negative thought enters our mind, we might react to ourselves in an unnecessarily harsh and critical way. Alternatively, in those moments, we can remind ourselves that this is all part of being human, and that we did not choose our tricky mind, and that it's not our fault. This allows us to bring a more compassionate response to ourselves in those moments, and gives us the opportunity to move forward in a way we would prefer. I have a past just like you do. Some of it I look back on with joy and pride, and some of it I look back on and it makes me cringe or feel a sense of shame. Earlier in my life, I was very unhappy, and I know that I didn't always treat people in the way I would choose to treat them now. In fact, sometimes when I think about my younger self, or I'm talking with someone about something from my past, I feel like I'm speaking about a different person. Sometimes I barely recognise myself in those stories. Through my journey of compassion, I'm grateful that I'm able to recognise my own suffering during that time and acknowledge for myself that I spent a lot of time in my threat system. I know now that when we're in our threat system, we tend to be hostile to ourselves and others. There's a quote in the book, "Even hedgehogs need hugs, even though they're prickly." When I was younger, I remember someone saying this to me, and I now understand that I was the hedgehog in that scenario. When we feel hurt or scared, one of our responses, just like hedgehogs, is to raise our metaphorical prickles as a way to protect ourselves from further threat. For us humans, it might look like being rude, abusive, saying mean or sarcastic things, resorting to physical violence, dismissing others' feelings, or creating a defensive barrier by being standoffish. I have learnt to recognise my shadow side and appreciate that she needs care and compassion just as much as the other parts of me. I figured I'd be better off befriending this part of me, because everywhere I go, she goes too. If you keep trying to avoid or deny parts of yourself, you'll never truly care for yourself in all the ways you need. We must learn to accept that all of our feelings are valid, even the ones we don't like. We can make space for our humanness and understand how we engage in the world. We need to take the time to slow down and reflect on what our needs are and how we can prepare ourselves for the roles and work in our lives. What happens if we don't do this? We can neglect the parts of self that are suffering at different times throughout the day. The problem with that is, when we are not caring for all parts of self, we are not caring for ourselves in a deeply courageous way that creates sustainable well-being. I hope you enjoyed that reading from the book. It's so important that we create sustainable well-being. This isn't something we want that's going to work for a day or a week or a month. This is the type of deep self-care that is going to nourish and nurture us for the rest of our lives. And given that, it needs to be stuff that is easy to implement, doesn't create too many barriers, and I talk about that in the book as well, some of the barriers and fears that we might have to this. It's got to work for us. It can't be cookie cutter, one size fits all. I'd love for you to get a copy of the book. I really believe this is going to be helpful for many people. It's been my absolute pleasure writing it. And if you do get a copy of the book and you share anything on social media, please do tag me. One, because that's going to give me an absolute thrill. And two, I would love to share it as well, so we can get this book into the hands of more people. And please, please reach out and let me know what you think of the book, how it may have helped you, because I'm really, really keen to see how this lands for everybody. And as always, ratings and reviews are so important to small business and to authors. So if you could take the time to do a Goodreads and/or Amazon review, I'd really appreciate that. Feel free to reach out with any questions. I hope you have an amazing week. Take care of yourself, and as always, keep your future self in mind. Go well and go gently with yourselves. See you next week. Bye.